most entrepreneurs in the beginning of their journeys and throughout the entire entrepreneurial experience, you're going to hit obstacle after obstacle after obstacle. And the question becomes, what are you going to do in the midst of that obstacle?
I'm Amy Jo Martin. Welcome to the Why Not Now show. You know that thing you've been thinking about doing? Yeah, that one. Why not now? Have you ever actually taken the time to ask yourself, what's stopping me? Let's talk it through. This is your chance to give that idea the attention it deserves and take action. Each episode, I have a chat with a fascinating person, from entrepreneurs to athletes, celebrities, my parents, rocket scientists, and all walks of life. We talk through a critical time when they've asked themselves, why not now? We dissect that day or even that moment, step by step.
Just let go.
Bob Dalton, the founder of Sackcloth and Ashes, is on the show today. I took so many notes from this session, and I can't wait for you to listen to this episode. But first, let me share how we connected. So as many of you know, I run a program called the Renegade Brand Bootcamp for female entrepreneurs and female leaders. Well, Blake Mykoski, who's the founder of Tom's Shoes, did a scholarship for the last program. And so we announced this on Instagram, and Blake did a video and shared. And Bob commented on that video and he said, hey, can I do one too? It was just a simple comment. I mean, it was one sentence. And sure enough, we connect and he offers up a scholarship for the program as well. I've never met Bob. I really didn't know too much about him, but we hopped on the phone and we just clicked. He wanted absolutely nothing from providing the scholarship. He just wants to support and elevate women who are starting their own companies, who are leading and doing big things. And he said specifically he knows how hard it can be in the beginning. We talk about his beginning. So if you don't like him from just that, I can't even imagine what else you would need, right? So Bob he's an entrepreneur. He kind of tripped into Sackcloth and Ashes, which is essentially a company who creates blankets. They create these amazing blankets. I have one sitting like right here. Keeps me warm in the studio. And for every blanket they sell, they donate one to a homeless shelter in your local vicinity from where you live as the purchaser. So it's this incredible journey, but the why behind it is everything. He talks about a family member becoming homeless and what that was like for him and how he got started. So he referred to himself as kind of an aspiring entrepreneur in the beginning. You know, when you have ideas and you think, I'm going to do one day and actually get started someday. It's an aspiring entrepreneur. Well, there was a moment when he turned the corner. He was sitting in his car, and it was that moment of, I'm starting today. Something happened, and it was a trigger that literally he drove to Joann's fabric store right then and there and bought himself a sewing machine. He didn't know how to sew. That was the next challenge. We got some materials, some fabric, and a sewing machine. So for anyone listening who has an idea, maybe it's a company, it's a project, whatever it is, and you just don't know how to get started, or you just have not finally pushed yourself over that starting line, listen to this conversation and take notes, because it's exactly where Bob was, and he talks through what he did and what helped him push himself over that starting line. Now, this is an awesome conversation for business advice as well, because given Bob started from scratch and there was very little, if zero, infrastructure that he had prior to starting this company. He grew it from nothing. And there was a moment where it was a pivoting inflection point. Something happened, and this opportunity just kind of came up from out of nowhere. He talks about how he leveraged it, right? So this opportunity was something, it's a little app called Instagram. The main global Instagram account that had like 32 million followers at the time said, we're going to highlight you. And he talks through what he did, how he then took that insight and really grew his company leveraging Instagram and leveraging influencers as a marketing engine. He also talks about what's happened since. So that was a few years ago. And the environment, the space has changed for marketers. There are so many really cool reframes in this conversation where he really looks at advocacy versus advertising. And in a way, he did that with this scholarship for the Renegade Brand Bootcamper. And as a result, now we're on this podcast, and he really focuses on that advocacy versus advertising. We talk through some productivity tips, how he designs his day, and many other topics specifically under that business umbrella that's really helped him stay true and in alignment with why he started this company. A couple years down the road, he's experiencing some great, incredible success, but how he stays aligned is so key, and why. One other awesome topic that we explored was the fact that Bob knew nothing about fabric and this industry that he launched into. Zero. And oftentimes how those fresh eyes, right, those rookie eyes where you don't really know anything, they're innovative eyes. They don't hold you to what's always been done before because you don't even know what's been done before, right? So they're amazing for innovation. Okay, let's hop into it. Here's Bob Dalton. How we spend our days is how we spend our lives. For me, being able to design my own day is a non-negotiable. As many of you know, I'm a bit of a time management nerd. So when I find something that allows me to be more efficient and more effective, I want to share it with everyone. So here's the scoop. I have a new tool in my productivity tool belt, and I'm a bit obsessed. It's Monday.com. My team and I have never felt more organized, and I have a new sense of perceived control. My to-do list is no longer the boss of me. I feel more in control because every project, initiative, date, and task is captured and organized in one place. And my team is in the loop and involved every step of the way. With Monday.com, it's like I have a brand new operating system. There's no long list, and everything has its own home, its own deadline, its own team member that's assigned and associated, and it's color coordinated. We all have multifaceted jobs and businesses. There are many components to my business, and each and every one of them has its own compartment. Each division is always one click away. For example, my team and I have a dedicated board for this very podcast. Did you know there are 28 steps involved in getting one podcast to air? It's the same exact process every time. And it's a system. We have the various key steps mapped out as micro tasks. And this allows for my team and I to stay in lockstep every step of the way. With Monday.com, I can zoom out and see the big picture, a roadmap view from 30,000 feet. And a moment later, I can zoom in and focus on a specific micro task within a project, within a division of the company. I could go on and on about the features that Monday.com offers, one of which is I've built my social media content calendar inside of Monday.com. I finally have one that I actually use, that I like, and it's embedded into my overall Google Calendar. Another feature that I love is the Google Doc integration. You know I love a good spreadsheet. I can pull them into Monday.com and edit them right there versus having 97 tabs open on my computer. If how we spend our days is how we spend our lives, then I can't think of anything more important than using the time in our days wisely. Head to Monday.com if you want a free trial. And let me know on social media how it goes for you. Shoot me a DM. We can swap tips and tricks. Bob, welcome to the Why Not Now show. Thank you so much for joining me today. And in the spirit of Why Not Now, let's get started. Can you tell me about a time when you had a big decision to make and you asked yourself, why not now?
Yeah. So back in 2013, my mom ended up going through a really difficult time and she ended up living on the streets. And it completely changed my paradigm of how I view and understand homelessness. So I came up with an idea. I started calling my local homeless shelters to ask what they needed. Her story had really inspired me to actually do something about homelessness. And I was passionate about helping every societal issue except for homelessness. And through her journey, it inspired me to call my local homeless shelters to ask what they needed, and they all said blankets. And so I was familiar with the one for one business model that Tom's did an incredible job pioneering, but I wanted to take it a step further and localize the model. And so I came up with the idea that for every blanket purchase, we'll donate a blanket to your local homeless shelter. And I wanted to create an experience that if you buy a product from our website, we'll send a blanket to a homeless shelter down the street from where you live. So if you buy a blanket and you live in Austin, Texas, we'll send a blanket to a shelter in Austin. If you live in New York and you buy a blanket, we'll send a blanket to a shelter in New York. So I came up with the idea and I did what most people do when they have a really good idea. I absolutely nothing about it. And I found
Yep.
myself sitting in my car and my seat leaned back all the way and my knees were up on my steering wheel. And I'm having one of those what is the meaning of life moments. And I have this idea and I'm not doing anything about it. And my mom's going through a really hard time. And I'm 24 years old and I'm trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do with my life. And all of these things combined, it feels like the walls are like caving in on me as I'm sitting in this car. And I look up and on my knee, there's a coffee cup. And on the coffee sleeve, it says, "What are you waiting for?" And so, similar to your question, why not now? I was prompted to start my car and I drove straight down to Joann's Fabric, bought a sewing machine and a roll of fabric, and drained my savings account. And I told my wife, I'm going to start a blanket company.
I love it. Amazing.
I still get Joann's Fabric's coupon codes sent to my phone.
Oh, they're the best, right? Oh,
Shout out to
absolutely.
Joann's.
Shout out, right? Okay, so let's break this down. So, first of all, you're going through a pretty intense time. It sounds like navigating and processing the situation that your mom's in and what you can do to help. And that moment in your car, the what are you waiting for? If you think about the time leading up to that, this had been bubbling clearly, but something was keeping you from green lighting and taking action. And was there something about that day other than that sign, like literally the what are you waiting for on that coffee cup? What can you tell us about that day that adds a little more color to why right then? What, because there's so many people listening that have a great idea and they're doing nothing.
Yeah, the reason why I didn't do anything, I consider myself an inspiring entrepreneur, which means I had a lot of names written down in my phone, like in my notes, of all the names that I would name all of the businesses I would start one day. And I had a lot of ideas in my phone. But there's obviously a huge difference from having an idea and actually doing something with that idea. And a big part of why it's difficult is because you don't really know how to do it or where to start or have the resources. And for me, in that moment, it was all of it. I didn't really have the resources. I had no idea how to start a business. I had no idea about the blanket game and the fabrics. And so to go from work, being involved in the nonprofit world since I graduated high school to age 24, and now I'm 24 and I'm sitting in this car. I'm supposed to make this giant leap into the business world and start a business and start a blanket company, even more strange. There was a lot of factors of there's a lot more reasons of why I shouldn't start. And that's what kept me from starting. And fear was obviously the biggest hurdle to moving forward in the early stages. So there was really honestly nothing in particular about that day other than I read "What are you waiting for?" and the question was literally staring in my face. And it prompted me to just go, you know what? I'm gonna try this out. And most entrepreneurs in the beginning of their journeys and throughout the entire entrepreneurial experience, you're going to hit obstacle after obstacle after obstacle. And the question becomes, what are you going to do in the midst of that obstacle? You know? And so for my first obstacle was I bought a sewing machine, I bought a roll of fabric, and then I realized something. I can't sew. And that was my first obstacle. Like I had two options where most people might go, "Oh, I don't know how to sew, and what am I thinking? And I don't know how to like. Why am I trying to blankets right now? This is ridiculous. Like, what am I? I'm just gonna move on to something else." And at that moment, when I realized I don't know how to sew, instead of choosing stupid me, I'm gonna just move on to something else. I went and looked in the newspaper and found a lady who makes like dresses and like prom dresses and everything.
Yeah.
And her name was Tammy. So I drove over to Tammy's house. I found her in the newspaper, and I was like, "Tammy, would you be interested in sewing blankets for me? And then I'm gonna take them and I'll box them up and I'll go sell them." And so Tammy's like, "Oh, this is so amazing. I'm already quilting blankets and I'm keeping them in my car and I'm passing them out to people on the street." And I'm like, "Hired, Tammy. You're clearly my number one employee." And so my obstacle was I can't sew, so I had to figure that out. And then shortly after that, another obstacle and another obstacle. But for me, it was like the fear of failure, the fear of trying something and then hitting that first obstacle and not being sure if I would be willing to continue on after that. So after saying like I'm gonna move on, even though there's these obstacles, after like the fifth, sixth, seventh obstacle, you start building up a stronger resilience because you're starting to figure it out. Like even though I might not know how to do something or I might not have enough resources, the more you continue to work through those obstacles, the more resilience that you build. And so for me, it was like there wasn't anything special about that day other than I chose to continue to move forward, and I chose to continue to move forward even after I realized I can't sew.
It's amazing. I mean, between the what are you waiting for sign and then finding Tammy, and one thing kind of, it was almost like your willingness to move forward was being rewarded. And then it would be met again with an obstacle, but then you'd keep going. And it's so true what you said about figuring it out, more so now than ever. We're all in this mode of figure it out, right? It's just, there is no playbook for any of this. Carry us through into the next few steps. So, how did this start to come together? I mean, you were from the nonprofit world, and now all of a sudden you're kind of jumping over into a different land, but you have that one for one model. So that's that do good, do well, kind of double bottom line type of economic model. So what happened next if you fast forward in the next several months, the next year or two?
Yeah, and one more thought too on the last question too was, if you is one of my favorite quotes that I've been living by, so I wanted to share it. It's if you want something bad enough, you'll find a way, and if you don't want something bad enough, you'll find an excuse. I really that's been like the story, not just with the sewing machine, but just shortly after that, in that next year, was like I have two options here. I'm either going to find a way or I'm going to find an excuse. And so after Tammy started making blankets and I boxed them up, I drove up and down the Oregon coast, walking into shops and because remember, I have no idea what I'm doing. So I'm just walking into shops with blankets and going, "Here's why you need to buy these blankets over the blankets on your shelf. Because I'm going to drive down to your local homeless shelter and I'm going to donate all the blankets in my trunk." And so I got into about like 20 shops out of 200, which really set the precedent of entrepreneurship. About one out of every 10 works out. But
Mm-hmm.
the one that works out is the thing that allows you to continue on to the next phase. And so I got into 20 shops, hired the best photographer I could find. And on June 1st, 2014, sackclothandashes.com went live. And it totally looked like I knew what I was doing. And had all 20 shops listed up there, beautiful photography. And then I went to map out my business plan, and my business plan was I'm going to post on social media once a day. And so I started posting on social media today and just try to get creative with high quality content. You know, if I'm gonna have a blanket company, I want to like get creative. So I told my photographer, I'm like, I want to do a photo shoot in the ocean. And so my photographer, she was like, all right. So I was like, okay, can we use your living room furniture? Put it in the ocean. And so I talked to her. So we put like plastic wrap over all the legs and everything. We took her like Pottery Barn lamp and like stuck it in the sand. And it was an incredible photo shoot. Like people kept walking by, like, oh, are you guys Hurley? You know, and I'm like, oh no, you know, we're this blanket company. And then the next people will walk by, like, oh my God, are you guys Billabong? So after like 5 people that asked, I'm like, yeah, we're Billabong. You know, but
Sure.
so we shoot a photo shoot in the ocean. I try to keep high quality content. I'm posting on Instagram once a day. And then November of 2014, 5 months into business, Instagram emailed me and they're like, Bob, we love your story. We love what you're doing. We want to feature you on Instagram's Instagram account. And I didn't even know what that meant, but I was like, all right, look it up, 42 million followers. And so I started kind of going into a panic mode because I'm like, I'm calling Tammy up, like, Tammy, how many hits do we got? You know, she's like 20. I'm like, oh my God, Tammy, we're about to get featured on Instagram's Instagram. She's like, Insta what? I'm like, doesn't matter, Tammy, just start sewing. And so Tammy starts sewing blankets. I email Instagram back. I'm like, how long do I have to prepare for something like this? They're like, we're posting about you tomorrow. And it was the day before Black Friday. So I was like, all right, here we go. So Instagram posts about us, 42 million people. We grew like 20,000 followers overnight. And then that sparked me on this like 4 year journey of just building our brand through social media and continuing to set the bar in quality content the more resources that we got.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I have so many questions. This is such a good story. I can just see Tammy behind like a sewing machine with her eyes big. We like, Insta what?
Oh yeah.
Oh, what a legend. Okay, so this is brilliant. First of all, what happened after that post? So Instagram features you. It's wildfire. It's obviously a very good thing, but we hear about these stories where, the spotlight all of a sudden comes in big and it can tank a company because they can't keep up. Like Oprah mentioning something and then all of a sudden you either thrive or not. How did you deal with that as an entrepreneur? So, you've got this opportunity to leverage, but at the same time, you're a party of a couple, it sounds like.
Yeah, basically instantly I had my buddy, my best friend Jordan. He was sitting on like the floor, like fraying blankets with me. We had a hand fray every logo. And so we'd have the logo sewn onto the blanket, and then we had a hand fray every logo.
Mm.
And then we had to put fray check around the logo. And so we were just like handcrafting these blankets. And so Instagram's gonna post about us. I'm like, Jordan, I need you to quit your job, man. He's like, I just got promoted as a manager with full benefits. I'm like, it doesn't matter. I need you on my team. So Jordan jumps ship and leaves his job and joins me fraying blankets and like preparing for the Instagram post. And then Jordan and I just like for like 2 years straight, it was just him and I. And then Tammy eventually quit on us because how much we had her sewing, and we left on good terms. So shout out to Tammy. We miss you and we love you. It was just Jordan and I for the first 2 years. And so as soon as Instagram featured us, it was a really big deal, but we only had so much product, you know? So we just try to keep product in stock. And then I just got hundreds of emails and spent the next few months, getting back to everybody. And it was just a Kickstarter, really. It was just a big Kickstarter for our brand. And then I just doubled down on that because so many people, the influencer game was so new. Like there wasn't like Instagram influencers at that time in 2014. So I just started hitting everybody up that had over 100,000 followers and just being like, hey, can I send you our product and like $500 in exchange for a couple photos and a post? And then we started scaling our account. And so we were like one of the first brands to like get in the realm of like influencer marketing. And so for 4 years straight, I just really rode the wave of that Instagram feature and worked with incredible people around the world that I was sending our blanket to for photo shoots in the most beautiful places in the world and in the most beautiful spaces in the world. And just continue to gather content, work with these people, and they would post about us, and we slowly scaled, and we actually grew at a really healthy rate. And it wasn't until 2018, which was 4 years into business, we launched our first major campaign called Blanket the United States, and our goal is to donate 1 million blankets to homeless shelters by 2024. So for that first 4 years, we just scaled on social media on a healthy rate. We grew about 100% year over year. And it was primarily just Jordan and I. And then 2018 is where we started building out that team, launching our first campaign, and it started opening up the door for us to work with large corporations that started buying blankets by the thousands.
My goodness. And back to the root of this, right? It's very purpose driven, and it comes back to your story with your mom. Meanwhile, you've got a company that's growing very quickly, 100% year over year, getting featured on Instagram, 42 million people following that account. Was it a balancing act of trying to keep, keep up with the demand, but also the one-to-one model and that give back for people who are extremely, passionate about creating something that has purpose baked into their economic model? I think it's always interesting to hear at some point, is it a juggling act of the business and the give back?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, we had to identify, number one, what do shelters actually need? Like not just blankets, but what type of blankets? And so the number one type of blanket that shelters request is a twin size fleece blanket because they're really easy to wash. And so when you have hundreds of people coming through your shelter every night, they need a very simple product to be able to wash every night. And if they're not washing them every night, it starts to create other problems like bed bugs and all that kind of stuff. So they have to wash all these sheets and blankets every night to prevent a lot of other issues. So a fleece blanket was not only the best solution, but it was also cost efficient for us. So we could order 10,000 fleece blankets and get those made for a relatively low price so that we have the ability to have the margin to continue to innovate. If we're donating blankets to like a men's or a women's program, then we'll donate something like a wool blend type of blanket where they don't have to wash them every night. But the majority of shelters in the United States need a fleece blanket, which is cost efficient and most effective for their needs. And so that's how we were able to make it work for us. When it came to actually documenting that, we came up with a mapping system really early on because we're donating to over 500 homeless shelters in the US. And this mapping system is you type in your zip code into this mapping system and it shows you all of the homeless shelters that are in your area that we actually give to. And that's sackclothandashes.com/shelters. And so our documentation team would actually look up, like we'd get an order in, they type in the zip code from where that customer is shipping the blanket, and then it shows you which shelters in that area we give to. And so that's how we do our documentation as well.
Oh, that's so cool. And I think that's such a big component of value for people to know it's going local. They're making an impact right there where their boots are on the ground. So, and by the way, Sackcloth and Ashes, how did you come up with that name? Or what is behind that?
Right in the time when I was about to start the company, Sackcloth and Ashes was one of the names that was in my phone. There's like 20 different names of ideas and names. So I added Sackcloth and Ashes to the notes because I was really fascinated by ancient Jewish symbolism. And I was reading through the Jewish Book of Wisdom, which I highly recommend. It's an unbelievable book about ethics, and there's so many stories and parables. And the Jewish religion is so beautiful in that it helps bring some diagnosis and definition to a lot of the things that we're experiencing in our lives. And so I was just really fascinated by the Jewish religion and reading through that book. And I came across the name Sackcloth and Ashes, which is ancient Jewish symbolism, which means mourning and repentance. So the idea was when I started the One for One blanket company is the symbolism of for every time you wrap yourself in a sackcloth and ashes blanket, it symbolizes mourning over the homeless population and repentance by contributing to a homeless shelter in your area. And I really wanted to make this like beautiful, mysterious tie-in to how much of a difference that one person is making. And it's almost a symbolism of repentance, because the people that are buying the blankets, they don't, I would say 90% of them don't even know the mystery and the background of the name. But what it represents is that it's a symbolism of repentance, the changing of your mind and your heart toward a particular thing. And with homelessness, there's so much stigma, so much bias, and it's so important for us to start to change our heart and to change our mind toward the people on the street, and start seeing them as people and not projects, seeing them as people, not objects. And so there's this beautiful religious name that I felt like was nobody really knew enough about for people to put it into a box.
Yeah, huge meaning, and that symbolism is so cool. And I have to ask, how's your mom doing?
Yeah, so for about 4 years after I started Sackcloth, she was on a really difficult journey in and out of rehabs and hospitals. And finally, I got her back to Oregon, which is where I was living at the time. I knew that if I could get her back to Oregon, I could help create some options for her. And so she was back in Oregon, addicted to alcohol. I came across this women's program called Shepherd's Door. It's in Portland. And they do amazing work with women and kids. And it's a 12-month program where you have to be sober, but they provide an amazing community, therapy, resources, vision, work experience. It's not a rehab, but it's more of a community development program. And so I come across this women's program, and I'm like, hey, I would like to donate blankets to this amazing program, because it really hits close to home because of what my mom's gone through. And they were like, well, where's your mom now? And so I told them, I just moved her back to Oregon. And they were like, can you get her here for an interview? We would love to see if she would be a good fit for this program. We have 38 out of 40 slots filled. And so I got her there like the next day. My answer to them, I was like, well, I'll try. When you're dealing with somebody who's got an alcohol problem, you just never know. Mm-hmm. And you can never force them to do anything, And so my attitude with my mom was like, hey, Mom, I got an opportunity for you. You don't have to take it. I think it's your last chance to turn your life around. Like, it's a really, really big opportunity for you. And I don't know if you're going to get another one like this. But if you choose not to go into this program for a year, then I fully support your decision, and I'm with you all the way. And so she got in my car, and we drove to Shepherd's Door. And she graduated the program in December of 2019, celebrated a year of sobriety, and she's been sober ever since.
We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Are you ready for change? Or maybe you're already in a season of expansion. As we embrace this new decade, are you ready to take action on your own why not now idea? Maybe that means starting the company, launching the podcast, writing the book, or doing more public speaking, injecting your why into what you are doing. At the end of the day, that is exactly what creates connection. And connections convert. My life work is to help guide women through this very stage in their life. I do this through the Renegade Brand Bootcamp. It truly is the career love of my life. The reason I love this program so much is because I'm able to create a mosaic, a collection of like-minded, like-hearted, driven women who come together to level up. They learn the renegade mentality directly from me, and I share everything I've learned over the past 20 years in business. It's equal parts education, collaboration, accountability, and community. We are accepting applications for our 2020 program, and you are welcome to go check everything out about the program at renegadebrandbootcamp.com. And as a very first step, just sign up for my 5-day email series. I uncover all of the questions about the bootcamp and help you understand if it's right for you. We've had some incredible women come through the program, and you will hear from them as well. You can check out the curriculum, the structure, the vibe, and everything in between. Many years ago, I went to Mark Cuban and asked him for investment advice. I thought I was going to get some real estate or stock market type of advice. Instead, he said, invest in yourself. Invest in your own growth. Invest in yourself. Bet on yourself. This is the best ROI you will ever find. If you're at that point where you are ready to take action, head to renegadebrandbootcamp.com. Oh my goodness, Bob. That is amazing. I mean, first of all, thank you for sharing that. It was just a question that kept popping up for me, and I was like, should I ask or not? And I'm glad I did, and thank you for being open to sharing that, because it's like, what full circle to in you look at how the blankets in this company is what even opened that door. It's like that's amazing. Oh wow, gosh. So I think about how when you started it, you didn't know anything about this industry. You didn't know a ton about business, as you said, but how oftentimes fresh eyes are innovative eyes, because we don't know anything different, right? We don't know how it's usually done. Can you talk a little bit about that? Do you agree? Do you disagree? I mean, it sounds like you're constantly flexing that figure it out muscle, but over time, I think when we don't have a template or a playbook, sometimes we find more creative solutions. And as entrepreneurs that are listening, or inspiring entrepreneurs, to use your term right now, what's stopping them might be, well, I don't know anything about that industry or about business or something. What would you say to them?
Number one, I think that a big part of it is like education. So when you look at education, the lowest form of education is hearing something. Like if you're sitting in the classroom and you're like listening to somebody talk, that's like the lowest form of education. The next level of education is you seeing something. So like you're seeing some sort of a demonstration of something. And then the next level above that is discovery. And you being able to discover something that's going to stick with you so much more than if you just saw it or you heard it, when you discover it. And then the highest form of education is experience. When you experience something, there's no greater way to learn something than if you experience it. So the entrepreneur journey, and really the journey of life, is tossing yourself into situations that you might not have a clue on, but you're going to learn very quickly, and you're going to learn very efficiently when you experience something. It's more memorable. And so that's been a big part of my journey, is just constantly throwing myself into situations that I have no clue what I'm doing. A good example of that is right now I'm in the process of starting a foundation. And for some people, it might be like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Like in some regard, it makes sense. It's an extension of my work with Sackcloth and Ashes. And the mission of the foundation is going to be very in line with what we're already doing with Sackcloth and Ashes. But at the end of the day, I have no idea what I'm doing starting a foundation. And so I'm throwing myself into it, and I'm going to learn, and I'm going to learn quickly. And I'm confident I'll get myself to a place where I'm running an effective quality foundation. And it's not because I think I'm an expert, and it's not because I think I am smart. I think that I'm just willing to learn and throw myself into situations over and over again until I know enough to be dangerous. So I think it's that process. Experience, it trumps everything.
Amazing. So hearing, seeing, discovery, experience. And I love what you said about tossing yourself into situations. Exponential opportunity to learn and absorb. I kind of want to touch back on Instagram for just a second, because you've been a part of and been up close and personal to a pretty critical time in the lifespan of Insta. So the last 4 or 5 years plus. What would you say has changed the most about marketing on Instagram? And you literally were cutting your teeth on influencer marketing when it didn't exist yet, and it's just kind of starting to surface. So you are a voice of authority, but what would you say to people who are wanting to leverage Instagram today?
It's incredibly expensive now. It's oversaturated. It's not as effective as it used to be. It's incredibly pricey, if not the most pricey form of marketing. You have to be in it for the long run, and it takes a lot of money to do it. So it sounds discouraging, but that's where we're at now in 2020. Back in when I started 6 years ago, we were like at the bottom of the wave. And I was having conversations with photographers about what they should price themselves at. They're like, oh, I'll shoot 10 photos and post on my Instagram feed for $1,000. And I'm like, actually, it's closer to 500. And then some of them would get back to me and they go, I'll do this for $500. And I'm like, actually, it's closer to 1,000 because I'm working with 100 of you. So we were trying to figure out the market value of what is it worth because it's so new. So it's gone up significantly of what people are charging and the saturation. And I also think, and this is my personal opinions, but I think it's also been stripped of a lot of realness and authenticity. I think it's becoming a very fake world, which is hard, when you're trying to promote something that's meaningful to you, meaningful to your audience. You don't want your product to come across as inauthentic, you know, and that's a lot of what that world has become. So what you're ultimately paying for when you're promoting through social media is you're paying for perception, and perception is pricey. And it takes a lot of time to build perception. So you can't just like pay for 5 posts or whatever and then expect to be this thriving business. Like you're going to have to pay to create perception over and over and over again through the right specific accounts to catch some aspect of momentum. So that's why in 2018 I pivoted away from it because it became more pricey, less authentic, and very cheapening, it felt like, to what we were trying to accomplish. And I didn't want to be known as just an Instagram brand. And that's when we launched Blanket the United States. And that opened up the door for us to start working with companies that want to buy blankets as gifts for their employees or their customers. They can now give a blanket and make a difference in their local communities. That's what excites me. Posting to create perception got us to a certain point. But at the end of the day, the work that I'm passionate about is not getting promoted just to get promoted to sell product. What wakes me up in the morning is connecting the dots with people and companies that want to make a difference in their local communities. And I didn't feel like I was accomplishing that on the level that I wanted to just through social media promotion.
Very interesting. So you pivoted away from kind of the influencer marketing into more of a B2B corporate buying in and supporting in higher volume, it sounds like. And from a marketing standpoint, is that a sales team that's doing a lot of that outreach and making those relationships, or have you shifted dollars from a marketing like channel or mix to another bucket for promotion?
It's a great question. I think we've actually spent $1 on marketing for at least 6 months as of right now.
Amazing.
Yeah, I mean, we have some people, obviously, like if you want to count marketing dollars into like hiring a consultant to make some connections in the B2B world, then you can count that. But at the end of the day, like it really doesn't take a lot of marketing. The marketing that we're kind of organically doing is right before COVID, I was getting on a plane every 4 to 5 days, speaking at events, doing interviews, just organically promoting the vision and the campaign. That didn't take any money. That's something I'm genuinely passionate about. We were just getting organic opportunity at that point. I'm actually leaning toward, like, we definitely will do some like paid stuff moving forward, but especially during this downtime during COVID, I've just been studying so much and learning so much from Patagonia, where they don't spend $1. I think they spend like 1% of their revenue on marketing, which is unbelievable. And they've kept that quality and that authenticity about their brand and their mission, and it's all mission driven. And I envy that. I want that for Sackcloth so bad. I don't want to be known as every time you advertise, every time you pay for advertising, you're cheapening your brand. You're using an ask. And I'm really just trying to stay away from that. Obviously it's needed if you're needing to make money and you need that like immediate exchange. But I'm doing everything I possibly can to avoid that. And I believe that the new ad word that I want to claim is advocacy. If you're going to market your brand, do it through advocacy, not through advertising. And that's what I'm trying to prove. I don't know if it's going to be possible to build a brand on the level I want to build it by doing little to no advertising or paid advertising, but I want to advocate as much as I possibly can and see how far that can take me.
Oh, that's so good. It's so refreshing. The advocacy versus advertising. As a former ad girl, started her career in ad agencies. I wish I had that back then to be trying to convince, but it's so true. It's refreshing, I think, for a lot of people to hear that too, that it can be done that way. You're doing it. So, shifting gears for a second here, Bob, what's one lesson you find yourself learning over and over?
Yeah, I would just say like the biggest thing is it's pretty simple, but really staying true to myself and really staying true to what I originally set out to do with Sackcloth. It's very easy to compromise yourself, and it's very easy to compromise your business. And I think staying true to myself and my own voice and what I'm trying to share to the world, it's so easy to be dictated by influence from outside people and outside media and what everybody else wants you to say or do. And fighting to stay true to myself has served me well over the years. I think staying true to yourself, when you speak from the heart, people love that shit. You know, I think when you really, really speak from a real place, from who you are, at the end of the day, people love it and they're inspired by it. And I want to be known for somebody that really stays true to myself.
It's interesting that that's what you said because you exude that. I think you do. It's funny how we pick up on that as humans. It's an energy almost. You walk the talk. So that's impossible to do in terms of you can't fake that, I guess is my point. So whether it's, one to one or it's one to many, if it's digital or if it's in person. So that's interesting and really, really good. Super, super solid. From a what's next standpoint, you have a foundation that you're setting up. I imagine, how big is your team now?
18.
And you're on this mission to donate 1 million blankets to homeless shelters by 2024. How is that going?
Yeah, right now we're up to about 150,000. We're actually a little bit behind our trajectory, but we will donate 1 million blankets by 2024, one way or the other. COVID put everything on a slight pause from a B2B standpoint, but there's a lot of good things that have come out of this season where we've really focused back internally and shifted back to digital, which is our original form of building the brand, but trying to do it in a real way rather than through the advertising route.
And with all these different things that you have going on, and as the face of the brand that's out sharing the story, which is making connections and juggling a team and life, what are some of your top time management or productivity tips?
The goal is to not sit back and try to avoid being busy. And the goal is not to busy yourself with too many things. The goal is to do exactly what you're supposed to do. And my wife and I just got interviewed a few hours ago about marriage and work and balance and all that kind of stuff. The biggest thing that came out of that for me was, and what I had realized is, only commit to what you feel like you're supposed to do. Like, I feel like I'm supposed to be committed to my relationships, my close relationships, and I'm committed to this vision that I feel like I've been given, this business and foundation, these things that I feel like I'm supposed to do. Cut everything in your life out other than those things. Do what you love and do what you're passionate about and do the things that you love in your life. Cut everything else out. And the only times that I'm experiencing conflict in my marriage, conflict in the company, I start to feel that heaviness, I'm carrying too much, is when I've committed to doing things outside of what I'm supposed to do. If I say yes to something that I'm not really excited about giving my time to, or I know I'm not supposed to be doing it, or I'm not that excited about, or it's just it's wasting my time, then that creates so much other conflicts in my life. So I'm just trying to stick with what am I supposed to do and staying as close as I can to that. You're going to have to say no to so many other things. You have to live with the reality of you're going to be disappointing people, you're going to cause frustration with people, you're going to be peer pressured by people. But if you can just stay true to what you feel like you're supposed to do, it's going to eliminate so many problems in your life. And so I think that's the biggest thing.
That's good. It's so good. And it's very much along the lines of practicing essentialism. And when you say supposed to do, and I heard you talk about what you're passionate about, which is what lights you up and what you're committed to, that's a pretty good filter, right? For how you say yes and no. Okay, so a couple of rapid fire questions here as we're wrapping up. What keeps you up at night?
What keeps me up at night is the reality that people in the world feel lonely.
Amazing. Yeah, that's big. And is there anything that you're reading right now that you're super excited about, that you're digging?
Yeah, I'm actually, I was sharing about, I'm really inspired by Patagonia right now, and I'm reading Let My People Go Surfing
Uh huh. Uh huh.
by Yvonne. And such an incredible book. That the Patagonia story is unbelievable, and it's changing my life truly. I actually one of Yvonne's quotes is, "The more you know, the less you need." And I'm trying to move away from a lifestyle of just overconsumption and move into a lifestyle of contributing. So it's been a good practice that's come out of a lot of the things I'm learning from that book of like I'm trying to create more than I'm consuming and I'm trying to contribute more than I'm consuming. It's actually altering my vision of what I actually wanted to pursue in regards to like the things that I want in my personal life. Like I used to want a lot of things and I'm kind of it's like an ultra battle against that right now. It's like altering the way that I've been seeing my future on a personal level by just wanting to consume less. I actually just need what I need, and you get creative with what you have, and you're thankful for what you have. And I'm trying to actually eliminate things from my life, not add a bunch more on and overconsume. So I've been learning amazing lessons from that, and the Patagonia story that he shares in the book, like it's amazing. I relate to so many parts of the story where they really fought to stay true to themselves as a brand and for the bettering of the planet, and I feel like our mission is not to help the planet, although we did sign up for to be 1% for the planet through their Patagonia Foundation. But our mission is for people. That's our number one thing that we want to help our mission. And he's really inspired me through that book of staying true to our mission of helping people.
Awesome. I need to read it. I've heard about the book, and thank you for the reminder. So, pirates or ninjas, which are tougher and why?
Man, it's kind of like Bruce Lee versus Johnny Depp.
That's a good
Oh
comparison.
man, I gotta go with which ones are tougher. I would say that the tougher ones are probably I'm just gonna go with pirates just because I like pirates better. I think
Yes.
I think there's a finesse to pirates. I think there's a swag to pirates that I really like.
How funny. That's awesome. Little fun fact, Bruce Lee's daughter, Shannon, is a friend of mine and she's been on the podcast. So, and my husband actually used to work with her at the Bruce Lee Foundation. So I have all these Bruce Lee quotes in my head, but I am Team Pirates as well. So that's, we have that in common. And then, final question, what advice would you give that 24-year-old who was looking at, sitting in his car and ended up at Joanne's that day?
I would say continue to work hard, continue to stay focused, and be as patient as possible in times where you are feeling a lot of angst and that you need to do something that's completely out of your control.
Mm.
I'm just now learning that 6 years into this is patience is such, oh man, it's such a important part to this whole thing. And I was not as patient. I'm still not. I'm still impatient in a lot of areas, but I think patience has served me well, really, really well in this last season. And COVID's really helped develop that patience with me as well. And when I'm like angst to get something done or something finalized or something to go through or whatever, I'm I'm scrappy and I'm a hustler, so I want to just make it happen. Make it happen. That's been my mentality. But there's times where you need to sit back, take a deep breath, and you need to go. Everything is gonna be all right. And that's what I would say to my 24-year-old me is it's going to be all right. Keep working hard, stay focused, but be more patient. Be more patient. Everything is going to work out the way it's supposed to work out.
Oh, what a good note to wrap up on. That was awesome. It's so true. It's so true. And it's one of those things that you learn through experience, like you said, with those different levels of education. Thank you so much, Bob, for your time and your wisdom and for the important work that you're doing. I mean, it's making a huge impact, and I can't thank you enough for sharing with us today.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's such an honor to have this conversation, and I'm glad we were able to connect. I love the work that you're doing, and you're really inspired by what you're doing as well. And I'm glad our paths have crossed.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to the show. Hit me up on social media to let me know what you think. I'm at Amy Jo Martin on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And I want to hear your Why Not Now moments so I can share them on the show. Just send me a note to whynotnow@amyjomartin.com. For show notes and other offers, you can visit amyjomartin.com/whynotnow. And while you're there, don't forget to sign up for my email newsletter for exclusive content and announcements. A big thanks to Rock Salt Music for all of the tunes by the talented John Coggins. And of course, a hat tip to Richard Brewer for editing and producing the show. I'll see you next time, and until then, why not now?